When visitors first step inside the home of Kim Kardashian, the reaction is almost always the same. Silence. Not the awkward kind. Not the unimpressed kind. But the kind that happens when a space feels so stripped back, so restrained, so almost shockingly bare, that it forces you to recalibrate your expectations. No bright art splashed across the walls. No ornate chandeliers. No visual clutter. Just vast expanses of cream, ivory, stone, and bone. A living room so minimal that critics have called it empty. So white that social media users have described it as clinical. So controlled that it has sparked a cultural debate about taste, wealth, and modern luxury in America. But here's the twist. What appears bland at first glance may actually be one of the most calculated, architecturally intentional, and psychologically strategic interiors ever revealed by a celebrity. Tonight, we're taking you inside the story behind the most talked-about living room in modern pop culture. We're examining why this all-white space has divided the country, what it reveals about the evolution of luxury in America, and why there is far more beneath the surface than critics initially realized. This is not just about furniture. This is about image, identity, influence, and the shifting definition of American aspiration. And it begins with a woman who has built an empire on visibility, and who now lives in a space defined by restraint. To understand the controversy, you have to understand the scale of the platform. Kim Kardashian is not just a reality television star. She is a business mogul, a fashion disruptor, a law student turned advocate, and one of the most recognized figures in global media. Rising to fame through Keeping Up with the Kardashians, she transformed celebrity culture in the social media age, turning personal exposure into billion-dollar enterprises. Her brands, including Schemes, have redefined the intersection of fashion, body image, and digital marketing. Every outfit she wears sparks trends. Every Instagram post triggers analysis. Every public move becomes a headline. So when images of her Los Angeles home surfaced, particularly the living room, it wasn't just another celebrity house tour. It became a cultural moment. The house itself, located in Hidden Hills, California, was originally purchased by Kim and her then-husband Kanye West in 2014. Over the years, it was transformed into something far beyond a standard luxury estate. The redesign was guided by the influential Belgian architect Axel Vervoord, a master of minimalist, monastic-inspired interiors known for his work blending wabi-sabi philosophy with European restraint. From the outside, the property reflects Southern California luxury, expansive grounds, security gates, palm-lined privacy. But step inside, and the aesthetic shifts dramatically. The living room is not decorated in the traditional sense. It is curated to the point of near abstraction. Walls are finished in custom plaster, creating soft, organic textures that absorb rather than reflect light. Sofas appear sculpted rather than assembled. Tables are monolithic, often resembling carved stone more than functional furniture. The color palette remains tightly controlled within variations of white and beige, eliminating the usual visual noise of contrasting tones. When images first circulated, including during an interview segment for Vogue 73 Questions, viewers flooded social media with reactions. Some called it a mausoleum. Others described it as a billionaire's monastery. Memes compared it to an Apple Store showroom. Late-night hosts joked that it looked like the waiting room in heaven. But interior design experts saw something different. They pointed out that minimalism at this level is not about emptiness, it is about precision. Every line is intentional. Every surface is customized. The absence of décor is itself a design choice. And achieving that kind of restraint at such scale is exponentially more expensive than filling a room with traditional luxury items. In fact, according to design professionals interviewed by major publications, the finishes used throughout the home are highly specialized. Custom limestone fireplaces, handcrafted furniture, micro-cement walls, built-in seating that blends seamlessly into architectural forms. These are not off-the-shelf pieces. They are engineered. The controversy, then, isn't just about whether the room is attractive. It's about what Americans expect from wealth. For decades, celebrity homes signaled success through abundance. Crystal chandeliers, gilded frames, statement art, bold patterns, dramatic color palettes. Think of the maximalist glamour of Hollywood's golden era, or the opulent mansions frequently showcased on shows like MTV Cribs. Bigger was better. More was more. Kim Kardashian's living room rejects that formula entirely. Instead of spectacle, it offers stillness. Instead of visual stimulation, it offers calm. Instead of aspirational clutter, it presents near total restraint. And that shift may be why the room has divided opinions so sharply. Some Americans see it as serene, elegant, forward-thinking. A physical manifestation of modern minimalism. A rejection of chaos in an overstimulated digital world. Others see it as sterile, detached, almost cold. Critics argue that it lacks warmth, personality, and emotional texture. They question whether such a space is livable, especially for a mother of 4 children. That last point became one of the most discussed elements online. Commenters asked, where do the kids play? Where are the toys? Is this staged for cameras, or is this how they truly live? In response to those questions in past interviews, Kim has explained that while the main areas are minimalist, children's playrooms exist elsewhere in the house, filled with color and creativity. Reports from Features and Architectural Digest have described vibrant spaces dedicated to her children, separate from the serene adult zones. And that distinction may be key. The living room functions less as a playroom and more as a statement. A sanctuary. A visual exhale. Design analysts note that the aesthetic aligns closely with Kanye West's artistic sensibilities during the home's redesign phase. At the time, he spoke publicly about wanting the house to feel like a future Belgian monastery, a concept rooted in Verwoerd's philosophy of imperfection, material honesty, and contemplative living. Even after their divorce, Kim maintained the aesthetic, purchasing Kanye's share of the home and continuing to reside there. That decision suggests the design now reflects her identity as much as his. And identity is at the core of this story. Kim Kardashian built her early fame on visual excess, bold fashion, dramatic makeup, high glam aesthetics. Over time, her personal brand evolved toward muted palettes, neutral tones, sculptural silhouettes. Her scheme's campaigns emphasize minimalism, clean lines, and body-focused simplicity. The home mirrors that evolution. It is branding translated into architecture. But here's where the conversation deepens. Minimalism at this scale is not universally accessible. While the aesthetic appears simple, it is maintained through staff, resources, and financial privilege that most Americans do not possess. Keeping white plaster pristine in a household of 6 requires constant upkeep. Custom materials demand restoration and care. So when viewers call it bland, others push back, arguing that the criticism misunderstands what luxury looks like in 2026. Today's ultra-wealthy often signal status through subtlety rather than spectacle. Quiet luxury. Understatement. Textural sophistication instead of logo-heavy displays. In that sense, the living room becomes a case study in how elite taste is shifting. Social media amplified the debate dramatically. TikTok creators recreated the look in smaller apartments, both earnestly and ironically. Designers posted side-by-side breakdowns explaining the cost of similar plaster finishes. Twitter threads debated whether minimalism is authentic self-expression or curated emptiness. Meanwhile, mainstream media coverage remained measured. Outlets described the room as polarizing but architecturally cohesive. No confirmed reports suggest it was staged artificially for a single appearance. Rather, multiple documented tours over the years show consistency in the aesthetic. What this reveals is less about whether the room is beautiful. Beauty is subjective, and more about how Americans interpret wealth, motherhood, celebrity, and taste. For some, the space feels emotionally distant. For others, it feels aspirational. For design purists, it represents discipline. For critics, it represents detachment. And yet, behind the controversy lies something undeniably powerful. The room evokes reaction. In a media landscape saturated with excess, shock, and noise, a nearly empty white living room managed to trend nationwide. It sparked think pieces, memes, architectural analyses, and cultural commentary. That doesn't happen by accident. Whether intentional or not, Kim Kardashian once again positioned herself at the center of a national conversation. This time not about fashion or business, but about space and stillness. Looking forward, the long-term implications may extend beyond celebrity gossip. Designers report growing client interest in softer, monochrome interiors. The pandemic years reshaped how Americans think about home as refuge. Minimalism, once considered cold, is increasingly marketed as calming. Will the broader public embrace ultra-minimalism? Probably not universally. Warmth, color, and personalization remain deeply valued in American households. But the conversation has shifted. The bland living room may actually represent the next stage of visible wealth. Control over space, control over sensory input, control over image. And for Kim Kardashian, a woman whose life has unfolded under relentless scrutiny, perhaps a quiet, controlled environment is not emptiness at all. Perhaps it is protection. At the human level, that may be what resonates most. Beyond memes and headlines, there is a mother raising 4 children in a home that she has described as peaceful. There is a businesswoman navigating global fame who may crave silence after constant noise. There is a public figure redefining her identity post-divorce. The living room becomes symbolic. A blank canvas. A reset. So the next time you see that vast white sofa or those bare plaster walls, you might ask yourself a different question. Is it bland? Or is it intentional minimalism pushed to its most radical form? If you found this deep dive illuminating, let us know your thoughts. Do you see serenity or sterility? Evolution or emptiness? Join the conversation below. And if you appreciate thoughtful, fact-driven cultural analysis like this, consider subscribing so you never miss our next investigative breakdown of the stories shaping American culture. If the first wave of reaction to Kim Kardashian's living room was shock, the second wave was scrutiny. Design critics, cultural commentators, and even psychologists began asking a deeper question. What does a space like this actually do to the people who live in it? Because when images of the home circulated again, years after its initial feature in Architectural Digest, the conversation shifted from simple aesthetics to something more layered. Americans weren't just debating whether the room looked good. They were debating what it represented in a country where home is often equated with comfort, warmth, and personality. The United States has a long cultural history of domestic expression. From colonial farmhouses filled with heirlooms to suburban homes layered with family photographs and seasonal decor, American interiors traditionally tell stories. They reveal who lives there. They display memory. They celebrate abundance. Kim Kardashian's living room does the opposite. There are no framed childhood photos on the mantel. No colorful artwork dominating the walls. No stacks of books signaling literary taste. The surfaces are largely uninterrupted. The lines are smooth. The tones are nearly identical. And that restraint has unsettled some viewers. Interior design professionals explain that extreme minimalism demands something counterintuitive: confidence. When a room contains very few elements, each piece becomes more important. A single sofa must carry the weight of the entire composition. The negative space, the emptiness, becomes part of the design language. In high-level minimalist architecture, space itself is treated as material. That philosophy aligns directly with the influence of Belgian designer Axel Vervoord, whose approach often blends European monastic simplicity with organic imperfection. His aesthetic draws from wabi-sabi traditions, the Japanese concept that beauty can exist in simplicity, asymmetry, and natural wear. Though Kim and her former husband Kanye West originally collaborated with Vervoord on the redesign, the home's continued preservation under Kim's sole ownership suggests that the philosophy resonated beyond the marriage. Experts note that plaster walls, for example, are not just decorative choices. Hand-applied plaster creates subtle texture that shifts with light throughout the day. Morning sun may soften the space into warm cream, Evening shadows may deepen it into muted gray. The effect is dynamic, even if photographs flatten it into apparent monotony. That nuance is often lost in viral screenshots. But perhaps the most revealing aspect of this debate is generational. Millennials and Gen Z viewers, who grew up in an era of visual overload, Instagram feeds, constant notifications, algorithm-driven stimulation, may interpret minimalism differently than previous generations. For them, the idea of sensory reduction feels aspirational. A white room can represent mental clarity in a world that rarely offers it. At the same time, critics argue that the aesthetic can feel exclusionary. Maintaining such pristine interiors requires resources most Americans simply don't have. According to housing analysts, the median American household juggles work, childcare, and financial pressures that make museum-level upkeep unrealistic. A white couch in a busy home with children is, for many, impractical. And yet, Kim Kardashian has publicly addressed the family dynamic inside her home. In interviews promoting her brands and advocacy work, she has described the house as peaceful, even playful, when cameras aren't rolling. Reports from features in Vogue and other outlets suggest that private spaces within the home are far more colorful and expressive, especially those designed for her 4 children. The living room, then, functions almost like a gallery, a formal space, not necessarily the heartbeat of daily family life. That distinction matters. American homes often have rooms reserved for guests, formal dining rooms used twice a year, pristine sitting areas off-limits to children. Kim's living room may be a hyper-elevated version of that tradition. Still, social media was relentless. Clips from the Vogue 73 Questions tour resurfaced repeatedly. Users zoomed in, searching for hidden details, subtle curves in the fireplace, the way the furniture seemed built into the architecture, the enormous scale of the room itself. Others overlaid humorous commentary, joking that it looked like a rendering that never fully loaded. But beneath the humor was something more revealing: fascination. Americans remain deeply intrigued by how the ultra-wealthy live. From the days of lifestyles of the rich and famous to modern streaming-era celebrity home tours, there is a persistent desire to peek behind gated communities and see what success looks like. In that sense, Kim's living room did exactly what celebrity spaces have always done. It fueled curiosity. The difference is that instead of crystal chandeliers and gold trim, viewers found silence. And silence, culturally, can be uncomfortable. Psychologists who study environmental design often note that warm colors and varied textures stimulate conversation and comfort. White-on-white schemes, especially at large scale, can evoke calm but also distance. The emotional response varies depending on the individual's associations with space. Hospitals are often white. So are art galleries. So are tech showrooms. Which interpretation dominates depends on personal experience. For Kim Kardashian, whose public life has been anything but quiet, a controlled environment may offer psychological balance. Her career has been defined by constant visibility, paparazzi flashbulbs, tabloid speculation, social media analysis. In that context, a restrained home can function as retreat. This is particularly significant when considering her post-divorce evolution. After finalizing her separation from Kanye West, Kim continued investing in the property. According to real estate records widely reported at the time, she purchased his remaining share of the estate, solidifying it as her primary residence. That move was symbolic. Rather than abandoning the home associated with their marriage, she claimed it fully. She maintained the aesthetic. She preserved the minimalism. That continuity suggests agency rather than lingering attachment. Financially, the property represents a significant asset within her broader portfolio. Kim Kardashian's net worth, as estimated by major business publications, stems from diversified ventures including schemes, endorsements, and media production. The Hidden Hills estate is both personal residence and long-term investment in a high-value California market. But beyond finance, there is branding. The neutral palette of the living room mirrors the neutral tones of Skims' campaigns. Her fashion choices in recent years have leaned heavily into monochrome looks. Even her beauty brand packaging followed minimalist principles before its sale and restructuring. The house aligns visually with the empire. In modern celebrity culture, consistency is currency. That alignment may explain why, despite criticism, the design has remained largely unchanged. It reinforces identity, and that identity now exists in a different era of celebrity. We are living in a moment where quiet luxury dominates fashion headlines, understated silhouettes, muted tones, subtle craftsmanship over obvious logos. Kim's living room fits squarely within that cultural movement. It rejects ostentation in favor of texture and proportion. Whether one finds it inviting or austere is subjective, but it is undeniably intentional. Media coverage has largely avoided sensationalism in describing the space, instead framing it as polarizing. Outlets note the divide but also emphasize the architectural pedigree. That balanced approach reflects a broader shift in how celebrity interiors are discussed. It's less about envy and more about analysis. Yet, the social divide persists. Some Americans see the space and feel inspired to declutter. Others feel alienated, arguing that extreme minimalism erases personality. The debate taps into deeper cultural conversations about authenticity. Does a nearly empty room reveal inner peace, or does it project curated perfection? The answer may be both. Kim Kardashian has built her career on carefully managed visibility. Her home, at least in its public-facing rooms, appears equally curated. That doesn't mean it is artificial. It means it is controlled. And in a world where so much feels chaotic, control can be powerful. As we move forward, the larger question becomes this: will this aesthetic influence mainstream American design, or will it remain a high-end outlier? Interior designers report increased demand for neutral palettes and textured finishes, but they also emphasize adaptation. Most clients seek warmth within minimalism: wood tones, soft textiles, personal artifacts. Few replicate the near-monastic scale seen in Kim's living room. In that sense, the space may function more as inspiration than blueprint. But culturally, its impact is undeniable. A single room sparked national debate about taste, wealth, motherhood, and modern luxury. It challenged assumptions about what success should look like. It forced viewers to confront their own preferences and biases. And perhaps that's the deeper story. The living room is not simply white. It is a mirror reflecting how Americans define comfort, how they interpret privilege, how they respond to restraint in an age addicted to spectacle. In the next part of this investigation, we'll examine how this design choice fits into the broader transformation of Kim Kardashian's public persona, from reality star to business mogul to legal advocate, and what her evolving aesthetic says about the future of celebrity influence in America. Because there may be even more to this bland room than meets the eye. As the debate over Kim Kardashian's all-white living room intensified, something more profound began to emerge beneath the surface-level commentary. The conversation was no longer just about decor. It was about transformation. Because to fully understand why this room exists the way it does, you have to look at the arc of Kim Kardashian's public identity and how dramatically it has evolved over the past 2 decades. When America was first introduced to her through Keeping Up with the Kardashians, her image was synonymous with high-gloss glamour. Bold makeup, body-conscious silhouettes, dramatic lighting, maximalist fashion statements. The Kardashian brand thrived on visual saturation. Their homes at the time reflected that same energy: ornate furnishings, mirrored surfaces, traditional luxury cues that signaled wealth in unmistakable ways. But as the years progressed, something shifted. Kim's fashion palette began to narrow. Earth tones replaced neon. Silhouettes became architectural rather than decorative. Campaigns for schemes leaned into sculptural simplicity, often photographed against neutral backdrops that emphasized form over embellishment. The branding was no longer allowed. It was controlled. That aesthetic restraint coincided with a personal evolution that extended far beyond style. In 2019, Kim announced she was studying law through California's apprenticeship pathway, pursuing criminal justice reform advocacy. Her involvement in high-profile clemency cases brought her into a new arena, one far removed from red carpets and reality